All right, all right, all right, all right. First off, happy Resurrection Day. All right. It's Easter. It's Easter somewhere. It's Easter everywhere. All right. So welcome back to another episode of CorNbReaD, folks. I am tonight's facilitator, Dr. Hip. I'm joined by my co-host, Kurt and Sir Ash. And we are back ready to get into some more dialogue around the things that make us go, definitely. But we hope that we share content that is salty, sweet, and right on time. But we want to make sure that you get to tap in and get some of this good stuff that does our hearts well, we know. But we are here tonight to get back into some more dialogue on tonight's topic around validation. Before we get into the topic, I wanted to just say, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so by clicking the bell on our YouTube channel page. It's really simple. You click it, it will remind you when we drop our episodes at 7 o'clock every Sunday. It'll actually say ding. So if you subscribe, go to the channel to do that. If you aren't following us, we are on Instagram and Facebook at Eat More CorNbReaD. Literally, we love to hear from our viewers and or followers as well. So if you have any questions or feedback in regards to the content that we're going to discuss tonight or any of our previous episodes, please reach out to us directly at thatgoodcornbread@gmail.com. All right. Now that the housekeeping things are out of the way, I wanted to get into the topic tonight, fellas, which is validation is expensive. And I want to kick it off by just kind of going down the pathway of us really taking this Resurrection Sunday to personally reflect on, thinking about our show, thinking about this podcast and what it does for us from a validation standpoint. We all join forces for the reasons of supporting each other and pouring into each other's lives directly, being Black men that's willing to do that. But it does still serve a purpose, right? It does still serve some kind of cushion of comfort to know that we have a safe space to do that. And, when we hear from some of you out there who have shared, your feedback from an episode or share with us that you are touched in some kind of way or you're enjoying the content, we appreciate it. Does it go to our head? Probably not, just because this is like a purpose lane for probably each of us. I'll go ahead and speak for the whole crew. That's why we're here. But I wanted to open up to my co-host tonight as well, just being able to answer the question, what does validation mean to you?
It can mean giving just a sense of, yeah, you should go ahead and do that, or it's good that you went ahead and did that, or it's right that you went ahead and did that, and it may come from external forces or it come from internally. It's a whole sense of, I don't know, something like what you're doing is appropriate and just and right and should happen. All of that validation, right? Those things that happen when we're trying to accomplish something, those little voices that come, should I be doing this? Is it okay that I did this? What if I do something different? Are people gonna like it? Like, those are the questions we are asking when we're seeking validation. It can get in your way, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
So Ash, what's on your mind, man?
Well, validation it's a sense of confirmation, right? It could be a sense of a stamp or of approval, if you will. Generally comes from people. It's in the realm of connection and networks. And so there, it has two faces, right? It can be extremely positive and necessary. I think in certain lenses and lanes, we all need a sense of validation, right? There's an essential need for validation, but then there is the other side where, but I'm sure we're going to get into, where, as we said, it can become expensive, or we start defining our lives based around others' validation. And so there's some unhealthy aspects to it. But at the same token, on the base level, it is a sense of confirmation or a sense of approval, a stamp of acceptance that we all need. We all have a basic need of that, no matter where we are, no matter how hard we are. We all still need a sense, even to the hardest man, he needs to be validated that he's hard, right? Or that he's strong, or that he is a man. And so there is a basic need for it, and that's healthy, and so that's when I think of validation, that is what comes to mind. That's what I see about it.
Let's think about this past
week. Validation is not that expensive, though. Some validation is not expensive, right? Some validation is, I've been doing what I've been doing, I'm seeing some progress. I want to let's knock this non-expensive bit out of the way, because we're gonna get into the expensive bits, right? So it's not expensive if you with your crew and your crew is supporting you and you saying, you know, go ahead and do all of this. This is your crew. That's what they're there for. We talked about this last week, right? We got to hold them to that regard. That's not the expensive bit. The expensive bit is when I think we're trying to make a next step or grow and we don't quite know where to go and we're looking for someone to tell us. We might not say that out loud, but really what's happening is we don't make decisions because we don't know if other people will think it's okay. And that's an expensive form of validation too.
Absolutely. It's expensive when you become the cost.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. When you have to pay parts of yourself to someone else to be yourself or give rites of passage into the thing that you are supposed to be or called to be, then it's expensive. And that is a payment you might want to reconsider. And so that is that expensive part, right? As you said before, Curtis, like there are parts that aren't really expensive. It's an exchange, right? You know, we live on economy. You know, economy is about exchange, right? And so you should have a network where there's even exchange, and even exchange is healthy and good. Where I can sow into you, I can validate you, you can validate me, and that it's healthy. But when it becomes to the point where I'm starting to weigh, and it could be expensive on both parts, right? Not just on the person who's looking the validation, but the person whom you're pulling on to validate you, right? Sometimes you can deplete their bank account, right? Because you constantly are in need of validation and they have to pull extra just to give you things that you should possibly have yourself.
So let's get into
I want to hear from Hip though. I see it all in face.
So, you know, I'm sitting there listening because, you know, you both are hitting some beautiful spaces that we do not discuss as people in general, because we're always in the actions of these things, like that exchange and or the need, right? And or the support that literally takes us one step from being over the edge, because validation for a lot of people is staying alive, you know, in terms of filling that need or filling that void. I wanted to get into some weeds though, because, you know, on this show, we like to talk and we like to real talk. You know, I think it's safe to say that we live in a time now where we can see validation happening at every level for an individual. So for example, let's use social media for one of those platforms. Whether I had a background in psychology or not, I could probably look at pages or, you know, look through content and follow the navigation, right? Whether someone is in need or if someone is actually out crying, and or if someone is just trying to engage. You know, I think we talked about it a while back from the Hobby Hustle episode, where when we use social media correctly, it's a beautiful thing. You know, there was some time.
Go back to another episode.
Yeah. You know, there was a time when Facebook first came out, and it was college oriented, right? And everyone, you had to be in college to be on there. But when it went public, it was a different scenario where everyone can have an account if you had an email address. And, you know, I think over the years, I began to see like different shifts in people perspective. I think, you know, therapy is still not a high value thing in the Black community. It's becoming more high value. You know, more people are being educated, and we're living in a time now where you are accepting the fact you don't have to stay in your suffering. You know, so whether you reach out to a friend or a support group, more resources are coming to surface, particularly in our community. That's been beautiful. But I think I wanted to get into a little bit of the weeds about, we've all been on Facebook and we've seen people responding or showing behavior that is peculiar, you know, and you're trying to figure out some of the who, what, when, where, and why for some of these pieces, but then you're only left to put your own dots, you connect your own dots, put the narrative together, because you may not know these people personally, or if it's someone you do know who may be acting out of pocket, trying to understand why that need is there. You know, I wanted to talk about that for a second, like from the angle of you both being able to answer, and I'll answer as well. Do you feel like there is a high need, you know, in the social media world today for people to use that tool as a sense of validation? When I talk about it being expensive, you know, almost like if you don't get the likes or if you don't get the communication or comments, then you literally equate that to you being nothing, or there's an air of nothingness around you. Would you both regard that in high degree of acceptance?
Absolutely.
No. Oh, I gotta hear. I gotta hear both sides.
Honestly, I would say from a basic societal level, I would say absolutely yes. And I would say that in a sense, there is an undertone of driving of that perpetuation for the way you can see how many friends someone has, right? You can see how many likes a person has on the picture. And there is an immediate contrast when you post something and maybe you got 5, and then you know someone else and they post and they got 500, right? And then you start thinking, someone may start evaluating. I mean, I've been in that space. Like, what do I need to post or how do I need to do it so that I get 500 as opposed to 5, right? And so I do think from a basic standpoint, for anyone that engages the platforms, I do think that sometimes there's a basic need, right? It's a space.
What does that need? What does that need?
I think it's the need for interaction. I mean, that's the basic need for the platform we have first and foremost is interaction. And we have people who they send you friend requests, so there's a sense of attachment or relationship or connection, right? It's friend request. It's friends responding to your posts. And so these are people who we call friends. You ain't never met them, right? Some friendships started out of an inbox, right? Be careful about the inbox. Inbox can get you in trouble.
Right.
But they got all these things that you have, but we call it friends request. We call it all these different things, but it's driving a language that we have associated to relationship. But the true matter of the fact is half the people on social media don't really know us, right? But it creates a space for connection. And I do believe some acceptance, right? I'm going to say something and how many people are going to like what I say, share what I say, which means that I have a voice and someone agrees with it, right? And how do I know? Because the moment anything goes on in society, everyone's posting about it, right? Either for or against, right? And sharing their point of view. And so I do think from a basic standpoint, it does provide a most basic need of acceptance or validation of my point of view that I can share to the world.
So without the platform, and Kurt, I'm gonna let you go in a second. Without the platform, do you think we would be at a higher increase of engagement, tangibly with individuals? Or is that a safer way to do it where if you are not validated, i.e., no one likes your content, your ideals, your images, your value, because we equate that to value, I guess, right? It's like equated to a certain level of value that if no one engages you, you're nothing. So without that platform, do you think we would be at a better stance in terms of how we approach connecting and engagement and actually how we see ourselves first before needing the approval of the exterior to give us that feel?
I would say possibly. I mean, society has existed completely before there was a Facebook and Instagram, any sense of social media, right? We had personal connections. We had going outside and playing with your friends, right? We had these type of sense of connection that drives a healthy balance of real connection and actually real community, right? That made community more tangible and actually more near to you. Right. Now, depending on that community will depend on how you feel about yourself sometimes, because sometimes that community could be healthy or unhealthy. Right. So I can't necessarily say that whether with the tool or without the tool, a person could find validation with themselves or not. I can't really define that. It really depends on the person's experience with their community. But I think as it relates to the tool and not having the tool and how we express or how we think of community, it is much on a global span now. Community is near and wide. Community is global, right? As it is now to someone who's near to me or next to me, and being able to find that trust there, right? Because it's someone who I see, who I actually can engage with, who actually has a better sense or context of me than just someone who's I don't even know, in somewhere in Africa and Asia who read my post and validates, my comment. Oh, I like that. Oh, I think that's true. But we don't even know each other, right? So that's my thought on that.
Kurt, what was the opposition initially earlier?
I think this is where it gets expensive, right? So I think the tool is fantastic. Social media tools, Facebook, IG, everything is great because you can share your thoughts. The trouble occurs when we want the validation from those sources. And the issue that's caused from those sources is that those aren't very close connections. So what we're doing is seeking validation from very loose connections. And that's when it gets really expensive. They don't know you. And we talked about this in previous shows. The only thing I'm putting on those social media things is what I want you to see. So you don't even know me. So nobody knows each other here. Now, the expensive bit is as Hip said and as Ashley said, we can post our thoughts, and I really genuinely want to share. I want to share what's going on. And if nobody likes it, we've been so corrupted by not getting the likes, and that we think if we don't get likes, our thoughts were invalid. And that's such an expensive frame of reasoning, because your thoughts are fine. Nobody has to read your thoughts. I think it's important that we can type them up, write them, and get them out, because that helps us internalize them and move on. And maybe if somebody else is connected to it or sparked by it, they can like it, but they're not required to. It's Facebook. That's a game. That's not real. But what you share is real. Folks may or may not like it, but it's not something that you're supposed to say, okay, my thoughts are validated because 100 people clicked it. Even though I get mad excited when I get 100 likes on something. If I don't get 100 likes, I'm not tripping at all, because I can't let that cost get so high that I'm worried about sharing my thoughts because I think this might not get 100 likes. That's the expensive thing. Now we're not even sharing because we don't get the likes. So
yeah, I think validation. I think we all pay a debt to validation. Let me share a little tidbit on what I've been thinking. I'm trying to process it the best way I can. I think we all pay a debt to validation in some facet, because again, if you're alive on this planet and you have self-esteem at some level, and or if you don't, you are finding ways to develop that in some fashion. And we have these outlets like these social media pieces that, like you mentioned a second ago, Curtis, that gives us a moment to put our thoughts out there that might have done something for us. Or if we heard something from someone else, we can share, because that's the vibe and frequency we're on, right? We're trying to build communities to Ashley points that we aren't connected to, but we know that there are people out there that think like us and breathe like us and align themselves to the world like us. So we want to find those community. So globally, I think you hit it nail on the head there, Curtis, that, well, I think it was actually that we are, in finding ourselves, we are trying to find our communities, but in doing so, making sure that we don't bankrupt ourselves with that cost of being validated, because I think it's great to want to seek your tribe, but not at the cost of your sanity, not at the cost of your reality. Posting on social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, as Curtis mentioned, you put out there what you want people to realize about you, or you put the narrative out that you want people to believe. But I think when we get people who are developing, and this goes to young adults, I think even older adults, when they are developing in their self-esteem, because that's unbiased. You can develop that throughout your entire life. There's not a age that you're grown now and that's supposed to be fixed. So as you're developing that, you're working with yourself and dealing with yourself with these phases. And what you see out there sometimes can have authority on how you view your own life. And I wanted to talk about this expensive piece tonight, because I think without words, people are finding themselves in their spaces. Like I said, unless you're a PR person, or you are a celebrity, or you have a marketing business, or you're in the community and you're about putting that word out there, no one should be vibing for likes or information from others that make you feel whole. Personally, that's just my point of view. If you get one like, that means one person out there is aligned to you, and that's one more person that you can reach out to in your community if you are building community. Now, if you're just trying to put a wall up against you developing yourself to a certain level that looks like what you see out there, that's causing you havoc and making you feel like you're investing time and depleting your equity from validation, then that's a self-check thing, And I think we all have to tap into that self-check, because we all are paying into the debt of validation at some level. You both are talented brothers, in the tech space and in marketing and photography and so forth. And whatever I'm putting out there, it's a space of trying to bridge the gap or build a tribe or just share interests. Sometimes it's that basic, it's not really that deep, but I think we find ourselves in getting habitual to, like you said a second ago, Kurt, you got one like today, you got 100 tomorrow. Oh, that creates some endorphins going off.
Absolutely. Facebook primed us to essentially validation harvest through Instagram and all of that. It told us, just like you said, your thoughts don't matter unless you get these likes. Your images don't matter, your body don't matter, your thoughts, your prayers, nothing don't matter unless you get these likes.
when is enough though? So that's another question, right? So if you were a one like, and we're using the platform of social media because I think that's the biggest construct around validation. Like, if you're working a job or starting a company or you're an artist or something like that, usually your work can validate you at a certain level where you're just pushing through, but that's inside your bubble, right? I think everyone deals with a notion of wanting to be a little bigger than life. Not everyone wants to use social media to do it though, but it's the quickest way, right? Because you can just build attraction, create your narrative, and get people to follow that.
Formula for it, right? Algorithms and all that. You can play that game. But if you're playing that game, are you really getting the validation, or are you just hitting the algorithms that say, I'm going to reach this many people? And then there's a number game, because I used to work in sales. You just got to get so many calls out and you're going to get so many hits, right? So are you reaching folks, or are you just playing that sales cold call numbers game? So many people are going to have somewhat meshing thoughts, right? And that's why folks with thousands and thousands of folks, I don't want to bash on social media because what it really is social kind of validation, and it's a digital form. We can get that out in the public too. When people say, "Oh, your shoes is fly," or your car is dope, anything like that, like it can happen in all. It doesn't have to be digital. We're using Facebook and stuff because it's really easy. That like boiled down validation to a click. I validate you or not, right? It doesn't have I don't validate you, but I don't know, man. We just it gets expensive when we forget that Facebook and other social digital media, we can pretend there. And so can other folks who are validating you. They can pretend too. I want to make it seem like I like these things, even if I don't. I'm just gonna click it. I want to make it seem like I'm hit with Black Root, so I'm just gonna click their page. Or Black Thought, I'm just gonna click his page, even if I don't listen to his music. But somebody else will come to my page, go to my profile, and see that I like such and such and such, and make a decision about what they think of me that was curated. So it's just a very poor way to get genuine validation from your people, from people who know you about what you're trying to do in the long term, not just what looks good right now.
A few questions. It's Curtis preaching today, right? It is a Sunday. So
I don't really care about what people think. We talk about validation, man. I'm like, yeah, stop.
It's underrated in dialogue because I've seen a lot of interesting things, in my day, and I know it sounds like I'm 90, but I'm not. But I've seen a lot of interesting things about behaviors and what people do sometime and why they do it. And I'm always curious to know, like, what is your base to that? And I go far as say, like, let's say take social media out, let's take some other things out. Like, who are you, in your confidence space? So I got a few questions, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to let's try to answer these questions because I think our viewers, if they're watching and they're having questions about validation and what it means to them and what it means outside of them, what it means to reflect in terms of looking through the eyes of someone else, whether that's in your personal, professional, or your goal life. How do we redirect narratives around our self-esteem when it comes to validation? You can just give a quick response if you have one.
We talked about this in previous episodes, right? Understanding your triggers, all of this self-awareness bit. When you have a firm sense of self, there's not a whole lot of validation you can get externally that'll move you much. Maybe we'll need some prayer, or we'll need the guru, or we'll need something to give us that strength internally. But once we really harness that sense of self, validation is kind of like, great, thank you for noticing that I'm certain that I'm doing what I'm doing, but I didn't need that, but thank you. And I'm not searching for it, so I'm not gonna go out hoeing for validation. I'm not gonna compromise my morals because this person did the right thing. And that's when you start getting very strong and not needing validation. And you'll see how expensive it gets, because you can say, I don't need that. And if I do get it, then it's gonna make this person think they're more familiar with me than they need to be. It's all this give and taking with it. You don't need it most of the time.
Validation should be confirmation. If you want to be safe, validation should be confirmation of what you already know. Right. It becomes expensive when it's not when it's revelation to you. Right. When it becomes revelatory to you, then you might be in an expensive moment. When you start hinging on what other people have to say in order for you to get vision, problem. right? Because vision should be coming from you, right? No one else can tell you how your life should be or what the vision you should have for your life. No one should be telling you that. They can, right? But it's only going to work if you know it, right? And so back to what courage.
Laboratory is expensive. Oh, you didn't know this part? That means it's gonna cost you to take this validation.
And you're going to be dependent on the next person to give you the next piece, right? But when someone is saying something that's only confirmation or it's validating the fact that I already know this about myself, then that's safe.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Next question. I want to direct this to Black men. Actually, how do we as Black men correct or redirect our self-imaging when it comes down to validation? Because I feel like that's an area that's so leveled for us in our successes and failures in everyday walk and everyday life. So how do we, if we're coming from a social media lens, I think that's one of the pits that we fall into, trying to watch certain spaces or connect to certain lenses that's fueling us for our goals. How do we actually better approach that imaging for ourselves to get more concrete and owning more of that real estate and equity when it comes down to how we see ourselves first versus how we adopt someone else's vision for our lives?
Step one, acknowledge you need it. I think that's step one.
Acknowledge what?
That you need it, right? Be honest about the fact that you need validation, right? I think we have an unhealthy relationship with validation, and we think that we're strong without it. I don't need anybody to tell me. I don't need anyone to validate me. I'm good, right? And then we go back into this self-sufficient stance, which causes us to perpetuate unhealthy narratives. So now you seek the validation in healthy ways, whether it be a class clown, whether it be playing a basketball, whether it be, whatever the case may be, whether it be hard carrying a piece, whatever the case may be, right? Honestly, we seek it in so many different ways, but it's coming from a blind side. You have a blind side as it relates to validation, as if you don't need it. Every human needs it, right? Every human is looking for it. It's a part of our human experience. So one, recognize that we need it. And then when you recognize that you need it, you can find healthier ways, right, to actually get it. Right. You can find better sources to pull from, which perpetuate a more healthy narrative. Right. If I can, instead of going out into the world with the guys, if I'm in a relationship, I can get it from my wife, right? I can get it from my brothers. I can get it from the church. I can get it from God. I can get it from myself. Like, I can get it from other healthy places, but I recognize I need it, and I need to get it from somewhere that is going to actually push me towards the betterment of myself.
No, I think we're going to shift right into these crumbs, actually, because I think you tipping, you tipping right there. So I like what you did there in terms of just really gave some footprints as to how someone steps into the direction to, one, first see themselves, but two, activate the resources around them so that they can build, successful, healthy pathways of visualization so that we're not falling into these pits of validation. I think for me, I'll offer my crumb up. I think for me, validation is about authority. And if you're someone who does not have control on your self-esteem, you're literally giving up your honor of authority for who you are, what you think, what shapes you or changes you. Again, and I don't want to confuse validation with inspiration, because what inspires you doesn't necessarily change you. It just gives you a different lens to add value to confirming, as you mentioned, as to what you may believe or where you're going. So I think first, self-awareness is key to make sure that you can recognize who you are, what matters to you, what you believe in, what you want, what you don't want, and what you will say yes or no to. Stand on that, and then allow the things from a validation standpoint to either influence you, support you, or motivate you forward. And I think in that order, not backwards, not looking. If you're someone looking for the validation because you don't believe you, then that's where the correction needs to start. And I think we've all found ourselves sometimes in that situation. If you've been able to correct it, beautiful, but making sure that you do the proper steps to ensure that you are not giving away your power and your authority from imaging, that you are not feeling versus something you want. There's no time connection from you being who you are and getting that thing. So you would rather pose to seek the need to be validated by whoever to make yourself feel whole. And if there are deeper issues there, then I would just say, get help supporting those issues versus as you mentioned, Curtis, becoming a validation hole. And I'm gonna pass the buck.
Validation should come from you, right? It should come from you. That's where it should start, right? It should start with self-validation. It should start from you. When you learn the voice of validation inwardly, you'll learn how to recognize it externally, right? And learn the healthy voice of it externally. So start within, and then you'll know how to move without.
Yeah, good stuff.
Now, moving on to me, and this is kind of parlaying what Ashley said about your true self is needed. It is okay to be wholly you. And looking back at a couple of our episodes, we only share what we really want to share, which means other folks don't really know us, which means any validation we get from them is not going to be clear. It's not going to be the holistic type of validation that we actually need, especially if this is validation coming from social media where we curate our image. Your crew will tell you what's going on with you. They'll validate you the way you need and when you need it. It'll be salty, sweet, and right on time, just like this show. But it won't be 100 likes. It won't be waves of like. Your thoughts shouldn't be pop culture. Pop culture corrupts. Your homies, they'll keep you from being corrupted by that validation.
All right. That's the show. You heard it here. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us at Eat More CornbReaD, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in, and validate yourself first before you